Welcome to Naturally Inspired Radio, where we expose what's broken in the healthcare system, connect you to real health solutions, and inspire you to take back control of your life. We want to help you feel empowered, informed, and free to live naturally without fear, confusion, or dependency. Download our latest book on real solutions for health at naturallyinspiredradio.com. Naturally Inspired Radio is a nationally syndicated show broadcast on over 100 radio stations, online platforms, video channels, and podcast feeds. Follow us on your favorite platform today, hit that like button, leave a comment, and engage in our special live stream chats, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Visit naturallyinspiredradio.com to learn more, register for our weekly giveaway, and explore past episodes. You can also connect directly with Tammy, follow her on all major social media platforms, and discover more about our featured guests and trusted radio partners. Are you looking for better health? Work with Tammy today and take the first step toward a healthier, more empowered lifestyle. Schedule your complimentary 30-minute lifestyle assessment to explore personalized guidance on nutrition, movement, toxin-free living, and natural beauty without pharma. Get started now and discover Tammy's preferred health products at naturallyinspiredstore.com or text Tammy directly 720-303-8868. Love the show and want to support the movement? Head over to naturallyinspiredradio.com and click on the support tab. There you'll find all the ways you can get involved. Join our Naturally Inspired community, become a preferred customer, attend one of our amazing live events, get your backstage pass for exclusive access, and connect to all things naturally inspired. Thank you for tuning in today. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
What's becoming more and more obvious to me all the time, and this was predicted decades and decades ago, the antipathy between technocracy and the political structures of the world is just over the top. Technocracy hates political structures. They want to get rid of them.
Yep.
And one way to, there's a number of ways to do it. I mean, just unleash the Marxist, unleash Extinction Rebellion, whoever, the destroyers of society, release them. They'll do a good job of tearing things down.
Right.
But there's also this unmistakable effort in our country to break down our electoral system.
Yes.
And that does destroy faith in government to the point where you want to throw all the bums out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that would suit technocracy perfectly. That's what they want.
Yeah.
All the bums out, get rid of them. And they will just take over. The fixers, will take over and fix us.
Today on the Naturally Inspired podcast, Patrick Wood is joining us. Patrick is a leading and critical expert on sustainable development, green economy, Agenda 21, 2030 Agenda, and historic technocracy. He is the author of Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order, Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation, and the co-author of Trilaterals Over Washington. Wood remains a leading expert on elitist trilateral commission, their policies, and achievements in creating their self-proclaimed new international economic order, which is the essence of sustainable development on a global scale. An economist by education, a financial analyst, and a writer by profession, and an American constitutionalist by choice, Wood maintains a biblical worldview and has deep historical insights into the modern attacks on sovereignty, property rights, and personal freedom. Such attacks are epitomized by the implementation of UN policies such as Agenda 21, sustainable development, smart growth, and in education, the widespread adoption of common core state standards. He is a frequent speaker and a guest on radio shows around the nation. His current research builds on the Trilateral Commission hegemony, focusing on technocracy, transhumanism, and scientism, and how these are transforming global economics, politics, and religion. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Naturally Inspired Podcast with Patrick Wood. I want to thank you so much for being on the Naturally Inspired Podcast today. I have learned so much from you. I have listened to a ton of your interviews and read a lot of your things, and you've helped me understand technocracy. I, a year ago, thought that was a new term. I'll be honest. I did not know the historical origins of it. So I wanted to bring you on today so that I could help my audience understand, because within this chaos, if you can just try to understand where this came from, the evolution of it, and how we got here today, I feel like it grounds people better. It certainly helped ground me in understanding it. So I want to get started today talking about what is technocracy first off.
Well, technocracy defined itself as the science of social engineering. This was back in the 1930s. And by the way, the questions that you sent me show me very clearly that you've been listening to some of my videos and stuff, and maybe reading some material. I could tell. So you wouldn't get that information for the questions anywhere else. But technocracy was actually crystallized in 1932 at Columbia University, New York City. Scientists and engineers in the heat of the Great Depression figured, hey, we can do better than this. And they thought capitalism was going to die anyway. So they created a brand new economic system. They called it technocracy, for lack of a better word, I guess. And what it entailed was controlling all resources. They figured the price-based economic system was fatally flawed, would never fly, was going to die and forever stay dead. That didn't happen, of course, but they thought it was. So they created a resource-based economic system, and instead of using money or currency for price determination and supply and demand determination, they were going to use energy to control the whole system. And their logic was, hey, economies run on energy. You can't do anything without energy. And, even people can't do without energy. If you don't eat for 5 days, you're not going to be worth much anywhere. And the economy is the same way. If you don't have energy, things don't go well. And, to the extent you put energy in, of course, the economy will go up or down, depending on how much is there. So we can see this today so clearly with the energy crisis that's going on. This has been brewing for decades again. In fact, they tried this very same energy crisis in the early 1970s when there was gas lines, cars around blocks, gas prices went up. The gasoline went up 4 or 5 times, just almost instantly.
Right.
And today we have pretty much the same thing. It's an engineered crisis. There is no energy crisis. There never has been an energy crisis. It's a created crisis in order to drive control into their hands. And if these technocrats can control energy, they get control over everything. And of course, energy is, why are people saying that food shortages are coming? Well, because the farmers can't buy diesel. It's so expensive now. It's over $6 a gallon. They can't harvest they can't harvest the crops they have, and they can't plant the ones that they want to plant because they don't have enough diesel. And so they say, oh, lo and behold, there's going to be food shortages all over the world. Well, yeah, really. Okay. Why are there food shortages? Because there's not enough energy. It's just that simple.
Yes. And the sanctions. So, of course, we hear in the mainstream media that this is all Putin's fault, right? This is all Putin's fault, driving up the cost, and these sanctions are what we need to do. But he's really circumvented that, hasn't he?
Well, he has. And, he had the upper hand from day one. And, when you see, like at the circus, when they have that act and they have dowels and they put plates on top and they spin them, and the guy tries to, or whoever it is, could be a woman too, I suppose, but they try and see how many plates they can get spinning at the same time. And they hold one on their nose and one on their arm, feet or whatever. When you see certain plates spinning in the world at the same time, it's an act. You know something's going on that is just, you need to look further. Of the major things that technocracy has always wanted to control, food is one, energy is another, and money, monetary system is a third. All three plates are in play right now. They're spinning like crazy. And there's probably a couple of other smaller plates that, related to the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Russia has all the energy it needs. It is dominating the entire hemisphere over there.
Mm-hmm.
They have everything they need. They will never lack on energy, and they have been a net exporter of energy to all of Europe, to the extent where now that they're shutting it off, Europe is just going through horrible, horrible times.
Right.
Food is the same thing. They are the largest exporter of wheat, for instance, in the world. They have no problem. They have all the energy to grow the food. They have all the food they want. Mm-hmm. They could be a net exporter to the entire world right now, but they've chosen to, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to kind of hold up here. And in the meantime, they're cutting back energy to Europe, which starves Europe. Like the Ukraine right now is going through a huge farming crisis, agriculture crisis, because they don't have the energy. Plus, they have a war going on, and that doesn't help either.
Right.
But you see all these plates spinning at the same time, and you go, okay, there's some big thing going on behind the scene, and it doesn't have anything to do, per se, with who has more tanks or who has more bombs or robots or whatever. I don't think that's it at all.
Right. Well, and the sanctions are hurting who the most?
Us. That's exactly right. We're the ones getting
all Russia has done is said, well, that's fine. You're going to sanction us. Go ahead and bring, your money to the Russian banks in rubles, yes. And we'll, they can avoid sanctions completely. I don't think most people know that.
Yes, they don't. Most people do not see it because the narrative and the propaganda that's coming out of mainstream media, and that's in Europe too, not just here. The propaganda tells you what to think about the war, what to think about Russia, and what to think about Ukraine. And 99%, maybe 90% of the people buy that narrative without even ever questioning it. They don't ever give it a second thought. Well, of course, that's what's going on. I heard it on CNN.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh my gosh.
You can't get a very good conversation going with anybody if they come at you with that attitude,
Yeah. Yeah. But what I like the idea of the spinning plates, because we're seeing that in our political arena as well. So of course we're seeing, inflation, that's kind of one plate, but there are a few hot button topics that they know will drive people. And I've said, okay, we're probably halfway through the hot button topics, right? We're on inflation, we're on abortion, right? Pretty soon the light's going to be on immigration more so, even though that's been a steady play going on in the background, but somehow they'll bring it to the front so that we can focus on that. Like, this is an orchestrated play. It's a drama unfolding in front of our eyes.
Yes, I fully agree. The whole business of immigration, by the way, you don't see anybody flocking to Russia to get in. You don't see anybody flocking to China to get in.
No.
How about Chile? Nope. How about maybe Brazil, but no, not Brazil either. The only place where people are flocking in is America and Europe. And this was an intentional policy. We'll bring up the Trilateral Commission somewhere along the way. They were the creators of modern globalization. Immigration has been a purposeful, intentional policy of the Trilateral Commission to break down the societies, to break down the targets where this immigration is headed. Namely, the United States is huge, obviously, and is breaking down the fabric of our country in a number of different ways. Mm-hmm. And in Europe, the same thing. It really started more in earnest in Europe, probably. I would say probably at least 15, 20 years ago. And the primary driver of immigration, we'll call it immigration. How about we call it invasion?
Yeah.
The primary purveyor of invasion in Europe was a very prominent member of the Trilateral Commission who's dead now. He died a couple of years ago, by the name of, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget his name. It'll come to me. I'll bring it back later. But in any case, he was a former executive director of Goldman Sachs. He was from Ireland.
Typical.
And he was the special envoy after he kind of retired from the scene, but then he was a special envoy for immigration for the United Nations.
Mm.
And what he did before there was any immigration or any migration or any invasion, he went around to all the countries in Europe and had them establish quotas that they would honor for allowing people to come into their country as, like refugees, right? Well, you need to accept a certain number. So Switzerland was in it, Germany is in it, France is in it, all the rest of the countries in Europe. And they set these quotas up, got them to sign agreements to that effect with the United Nations that they would, honor these quotas if it really happened. And then it happened.
Mm.
And after the invasion started and was really underway, this same guy went around to all these nations because they were all saying, no, hey, wait a minute. No, that's way over the top. We got to stop this. We have to put up a fence on our border and stop these people from coming in. Well, the United Nations sent the same guy out again and went and beat up the nations. The governments of the nations says, no, you must honor your quotas. You must not pull your quota down. You must not build the wall around your own country, et cetera, et cetera. And they conned them or forced them into keeping the borders open as more and more people were pushed into their countries. And basically it destroyed the fabric of several countries, totally destroyed it. In France, there are so many areas that nobody will go because they're completely taken over by Muslim radicals.
Right.
They won't, people won't go there. Food delivery people won't go there. Police won't go there. Military doesn't even want to go there. And they've almost like carved out a little niche of France for their very own homeland.
Oh, it's
and this is happening in America too. The same thing has happened in America. There's some cities like, up in Minneapolis and around that area that are just heavily Muslim.
Yep.
And some places, again, like Europe, there are some places in these larger cities where there has been a major Muslim population. They refuse to integrate into our society, and they essentially set up whole communities that just have nothing to do with America. They have their own legal system inside. They have their own financial system, and they will use America as like to get welfare and stuff like that. They'll use America.
Right.
But they want
their whole
to
purpose
destroy.
then is not to integrate, it is to segregate within.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yep. Now we've seen this. The only reason I bring this up is we see this policy of immigration. This is a globalist policy to tear down the structure of society, the fabric of society. This has been a goal for decades and decades, and it's never changed. And that's just one thing, of course. There's many other things that have happened that have tend to destroy the fabric of our country. But that's a big one. And people are really upset about it all across the country. They're just bloody upset. And the whole energy thing, that's definitely a big thing too. This alternative energy industry has just virtually destroyed every country it got into. Europe right now is reverting back to coal, believe it or not. I think the whole narrative over there is going to fall apart before they're done. Unless they want to freeze to death next winter, they're going to start reauthorizing their coal plants to fire up again, which would be good, I think. And we may have that same thing here. But here in America, where we were totally energy dependent when Trump left office, we had everything we needed. We were in beautiful shape. The Biden administration shut down energy production. They elevated all this other stuff, the alternative fuels and, windmills and solar panels and that sort of stuff. Trashed our electric grid, basically, because of it. And now that we are all of a sudden not only energy dependent, but we're dying from the gas prices, from the oil prices, from the heating prices. I mean, you just wait until winter hits again in America. It's going to be chaos if something doesn't change. But in the meantime, while we are known in America to be able to produce as much oil as we could ever possibly consume in 500 years for less than $50 a barrel.
Yep.
$50 a barrel, one way or another. And that's just virtually unlimited energy. And Trump proved that with his policies to open up the floodgates of our own energy production. But now, as our energy, now oil is up around $120+ a barrel. Gasoline, as we know, is up around $6 a gallon across the country, and people are just absolutely dying over that. you've got this, all of our energy prices now have just gone through the roof. So instead of opening up our own oil again for $50 a barrel, our president, I use that loosely,
right,
the destroyer in chief, goes to Saudi Arabia and begs them to sell oil to America for $120 a barrel. $50 versus $120 a barrel. And we wonder what's wrong in America right now. America's being destroyed by these people. This is not just an incidental idiot who, said, oh, I want to go get my oil from the Saudis. No, that's not that at all. This was part of the program from day one, that they would destroy America with all these various policies. Mm-hmm. And they're just about complete.
Yeah. And if you aren't for cheap energy, then you are not for poor people. Right?
Yes, I know.
And it just kills me that these people are supposed to be all about inclusiveness and, helping give a hand up to people. I'm sorry, but if you aren't for cheap energy, then you are not for helping poor people.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so disingenuous. I almost hate to use this analogy. It just popped into my mind, but America is like a battered wife right now.
I know where you're going with this. It's so true.
And it's like this. The man in charge says, oh, I love you, honey. I really do. You have to trust me on this. And then, okay, the wife turns around and she's walking off, and bam, he sucker punches her from behind.
Yep.
But I really love you, honey.
Yes.
Wow, right. Again, it's like
it's abusive relationship.
The propaganda that comes at us says, oh, our government loves you so much. We're going to take care of you. We're going to safety, protection. We're going to do all these things for you. Good economy. We're going to cancel student debt. I don't care whatever the heck they say they're going to do to sucker us into thinking that they are our friends. And when you turn around, it's the old sucker punch right in the head that drops you to the ground. And you say, where did that come from? See, this is what's happened with energy. This is what's happened with the border. This is what's happened with election integrity. And you could go on down the list and pick all these things. The war is against destroying our government, but destroying the people who created the government.
Yes.
The technocrats in the end are the ones that want to be in charge. And this is what Klaus Schwab talks about, the Great Reset. The Great Reset implies a scorched earth policy.
Yes. They say things like there'll be no place for politics. There'll be no politicians, no financiers. So what does that look like?
Scientific dictatorship. Exactly right. It's exactly technocracy from the 1930s. Total scientific dictatorship. These egomaniacs in the 1930s that were at Columbia University, they were the top of the field in scientific field back then. They were absolutely the cream of the crop anywhere in the world. And they had titles and, comma, this, that, and the other after their names. They were brilliant people. At least they had a lot of education.
Yeah, maybe we can sum that up just a little bit better for our audience. If who it was that started it, and then they actually moved into kind of a group, right? And they were housed in Columbia University, and this was kind of the technocratic movement.
It was. Technocracy had been discussed in private circles, more or less, for about 10 years leading up to 1932. In other words, you could go back and document where you saw people talking about it, writing a few papers here and there, but it never got anywhere. It was just discussion. At Columbia University, it really congealed. And there was a group of technocrats left over from those discussions in like the Technocracy study group that was in starting around, I want to say 1928. They convinced Columbia University to take it on as a project. And the scientists and engineers at Columbia thought that was a great idea. They said, well, yeah, we're scientists and engineers. We will participate in this. We will come down from our ivory tower and we will go down to the basement of Hamilton Hall, where Technocracy was given free office space to do their thing, to develop all this stuff. And Columbia University actually gave them half of Hamilton Hall basement, which is quite large. And the other half was occupied by IBM at the time, the early iteration of IBM. They were building the first holorith machine that was soon to be delivered to Nazi Germany to manage train schedules and other statistical analysis and stuff like that. So they rubbed shoulders with all of the mucky-muck brainiacs, in the data area. But what happened at Columbia was really interesting. It was a twist of fate that nobody saw coming. Columbia at first loved the idea of technocracy. They were head over heels in love with it, especially the scientists and engineers who work there. But one of the people that brought this whole movement into their orbit turned out to be a fraud. He was he said he had all kinds of credentials. He had none. Somebody vetted him and, gee, this guy doesn't even have an engineering degree, and here he's running this whole technocracy thing at Columbia University. And the look down the nose, if you don't have a PhD, you are nothing here, dude. So, but he was kind of outed as being a blowhard and a braggart and whatever. And so
that put a black mark on it.
Yeah, the head of Columbia University was a horrible, egotistical man by the name of Nicholas Murray Butler. His nickname was Miraculous Nicholas. And he was a hobnobber in Europe. He spent as much time in Europe as he did in the United States. And he wined and dined all the big mucky mucks in Europe. He was a really good friend, for instance, with Benito Mussolini at the time.
Oh,
tells you what kind of guy he was, right?
Right.
So he had this inflated ego and vision of himself, self-vision of himself. And when it was discovered that this guy, Howard Scott, who was leading a technocracy movement, was an abject fraud, oh man, he blew his cork. And he drop-kicked that whole movement so fast out of Columbia, just make their head spin, and probably did. The engineers and scientists from Columbia ran back upstairs as fast as they could go, and they never said the word technocracy again, probably for 20 years, just because they knew that they would, that would just incense everybody. And at the same time, those people, including the fraudster Howard Scott, started Technocracy Incorporated in 1934, early 1934. And that became a membership organization. It was incorporated in New York City, and it became a membership organization. You had to pay dues to get in. And at one point in time, they had over 500,000 card-carrying, dues-paying members in North America. It was a big movement, really big movement.
Wow.
So, history didn't record this. And well, there was another thing that happened at the same, when Columbia kicked him out. The Hearst newspaper empire, which was back then like News Corp, they were the big player all across the country. They had a huge monopoly on newspapers. Hearst realized that he had been played too, because this promoter Howard Scott was famous for getting articles written about technocracy. And so he's doing interviews all the time, and they were covering his speaking engagements, all that kind of stuff. And when Hearst discovered that he had been played and newspapers had been used, he blew a cork, and he sent out a memo. I actually got a copy of the memo just to prove the point. He sent out a memo to every Hearst newspaper in the country, and he said, if anyone mentions the name Technocracy again, you are fired. That was it. So all of a sudden, ka-chunk, the article stopped. Well, historians operate 25 years behind all the time. When they go back to do the forensic work to figure out what happened, so they can write a chapter in a history book about what happened in the last, like say 25 years ago, they go back. First thing to do is they go back to the newspapers. They go back to the archives, and they go to eyewitnesses if they can find any, and they interview and they try and construct what happened, and that goes into the history books. Well, because Technocracy had about a year and a half of major press coverage, like at Columbia. Okay.
Right.
The article stopped. All of a sudden, there was nothing anywhere. The historians went back and looked at this and they said, this is this is a splash in the pan. There was nothing there. If there was anything there, there would have been something past 2 years or a year or whatever of articles, but they just stopped cold. And so nobody really put that into the history books. There's very little you can find in a legitimate history book of say 1950 or 1960 that made any mention of technocracy whatsoever.
But it didn't stop, did it?
Oh my gosh, no, it didn't. Not only did it not stop, it was kind of like that nuclear submarine that goes under the water and can just stay down there as long as it wants to. And it did. And World War II pulled the economy out, of course, and capitalism wasn't dead. It came back when the war machine was geared up. And so during the 50s and 60s, life kind of went on. Everybody, kind of thought, well, this is all good and life's going on. But in the meantime, a prominent professor at Columbia University in political science by the name of Zbigniew Brzezinski became a very famous strategist later on. Brzezinski wrote a book called Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. And he posited technocracy. He said, okay, but we're between two eras. That means there's an era behind us, there's an era ahead of us, and we're in the middle of one right now. So the title says between two ages, but that really implies 3 ages, if you can follow my math here.
Yep.
It's not hard, right? So he was writing from the perspective of the middle age. And he said the future age is going to be a technotronic era, not the one we have then, like a 1970 era. And
as a caveat to that, I just want to, just a quick caveat, I want to say that Brzezinski's daughter, because people have a hard time wrapping around their head around, how did we get here? Certainly everybody can't be in on this. What do you mean by that? You must be a conspiracy theorist. Well, this is generational. And so many people, I think, don't realize that it's just like you or I were raised with a certain set of values. These globalists also raised their children with a certain set of values. And we see their children every day, and we have no idea that this is the link to them. So Brzezinski's daughter is on Morning Joe on CNN, right? She's Micah Brzezinski.
That's right. Mika baby.
Yes. Yes. And so many people don't realize, like, how could all these people be in on it? Well, it's a family thing. They're just going along with their values they've been raised on.
Yes.
So I'm sorry to get off track there, but I didn't want to forget about that.
I know, that is incredible. Well, Brzezinski's book caught the eyes of David Rockefeller, in any case, the big money guy back then, Chase Bank, and the Rockefeller oil fortune. But Rockefeller was looking for something new to do besides just banking and whatever. As a banker, he knew that there was going to be a finite end to money someday, because that's just the way the math works out. So he's looking for something different. And Brzezinski caught his eye. And the Rockefeller family had a long history with Columbia University anyway. So it's not like they were strangers to start out with. They were always doing things together. They gave tons of money to Columbia University for different things.
Well, that's interesting that they kicked out Technocracy if they were a funder of Columbia.
Well, that's right. Indirectly, they were. But the Technocracy movement never received any institutional money. Otherwise, they never did. Not in the 30s and 40s. But when Rockefeller discovered it, what hit him was that this was a way to take over the resources of the world, because it's about resource management. It's a resource-based economic system. Well, what better way to take over all the resources and get a monopoly on all the resources? And if you have all the resources in your possession, then it really doesn't matter what kind of financial system would ever sit on top of it, because you're going to pull all the strings.
Yeah.
If people want to live, you want to live. Okay. Give me your firstborn, whatever. And they can do anything they want. That's what got Rockefeller into this in the first place. That's why they established the Trilateral Commission in 1973. Brzezinski was a co-founder with David Rockefeller, and he became the first executive director. And thereafter, they took over the White House. And Jimmy Carter was a member. Walter Mondale was a member of the commission. At one point, every member in Carter's cabinet was a member of the Trilateral Commission. It's like, you can't make this up. They captured the White House, but it was not for politics. It was not for the sake of politics. And they said that back then. We questioned them. They said, no, we don't want anything to do with politics per se. What they were after was control over the largest economic engine in the world. That was the United States.
Yeah.
So, historically then, looking back, by the time the 90s came along or 2000 came along, and I started to really do some analysis on, well, what did that really mean? We found out that 9 out of 12 of the U.S. trade representatives appointed after 1974 were all members of the Trilateral Commission. Well, those are the ones that write the trade agreements.
Right.
And 6 out of 9 of the World Bank presidents were members of the Trilateral Commission. And
yeah, what's coincidental?
Just coincidental. I had an interview with one of these guys from the Trilateral Commission back somewhere around 1980, and we questioned him on this. Well, so how come is it? It's kind of rhetorical, but how come it is that you only have like 90 members from the United States, and 1/3 of them show up in the Carter administration? How come that is? It's a good question, right?
Yes.
And this megalomaniac had the nerve to say to me, well, we just have exceptionally good people in the Trilateral Commission. And, people look for talent, meritocracy sort of thing. They look for talent. We got it. What a bunch of egotistical, I just can't imagine. But this is the attitude.
Yes.
That they've had all along. They're better than everybody else because they are scientific. The science is settled.
Yes.
And honestly, the attitude in the 30s and what we see now with people like Fauci and these medical people, the World Health Organization, CDC, and so on, the reason we see this attitude so consistently is because they worship science as their God. And their God can't be wrong. They just will not admit their God is ever wrong. So science is their God, and they are the priest that ministers to the God and brings the oracle of science back down to us peons, right?
Right.
And this is such a head trip for most people to get their, we would call somebody like that, if you knew somebody like that in your life, let's say, neighbor, a friend, a family member, you'd immediately call them a narcissist.
Right.
It's all about them. They can do no wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You must be doing wrong. If there's something wrong in the world, it's you, not me, that's causing it to happen. If there's something wrong in our relationship, it's you, not me, because I'm perfect.
Right.
And you're screwed up. See?
Yeah.
This is their attitude. So when an Al Gore, for instance, talks about climate change and says the science is settled,
mm-hmm.
in his mind, it's like, well, we have determined with our, it's really pseudoscience, but we have determined with our scientific model that the science is settled. There's no need for discussion.
Right.
What would you want to discuss? What do you need to take it to Congress for to discuss? There's nothing to discuss. The science is settled, and we have it, and we're right, and we know we're right. And you don't know we're right, but we're telling you we're right. Therefore, there should be no political discussion, no otherwise nosy reporters asking questions like I might,
mm-hmm.
And you just shut up, okay? Just shut up and sit down and go away.
Right.
And Gore went on to say, believe it or not, deniers, talking about climate change, deniers deserve to be punished. That's a direct quote.
That's a pattern, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Because that's exactly
any
what Fauci
dissenters.
said.
Yes. Any dissenters just need to be quiet and should be punished. And, people get really angry when you make the comparison to like Hitler's regime and what's going on today. However, there are so many identifiable patterns. And it upsets people, I think, because they're having such a hard time dealing with the truth of what's really happening. No, we aren't at the end of the Holocaust. We are at the beginning.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. My understanding was greatly, increased when I began to consider the work of Dr. or Professor Matthias Desmet in Belgium, who's a professor of clinical psychology, and he put forth this this theory of mass formation. Somebody
Yes.
else called it psychosis, but he said mass formation.
Mm-hmm.
And where he talks about when society like goes, or part of society goes off into a seeming madness of mental thought processes and so on. They can't understand what they used to understand. They can't think critically. That's what we're in today. So that's psychologically, that's what's happening to entire groups of people.
Right.
And it's globalist time. It's not just in America. It's not just in one section of the world. This is a global phenomena.
Yes.
And he said and conjectures that the people who fall into this mass formation, typically 35% of a population will fall into it, hook, line, sinker, that where you can't talk to them. And you and I both know people like that, I'm sure.
Yes. Yes.
You just can't, there's nothing to say.
No.
They're just totally impervious to anything you say. And then there's another 30+% to sit in the middle on the fence. They got a foot on both sides. And so they don't want to get the mass formation crowd mad at them. They don't want to get the other side mad at them. So they just kind of sit on the fence and they waffle. Mm-hmm. And they're not totally committed, but they're still not good for anything. And then the upper echelon of that would be maybe 30% of the people in the world have not bought into the mass formation phenomena. Hopefully that'd be people like you and I who are still able to think critically and look at things more clearly. But this is the structure right now that we see in the world. There's about a third, and a third, where unfortunately the bottom third, the mass formation crowd, is what's giving us the trouble. They're the ones promoting the narrative right now, or at least repeating the narrative all over the planet. Right. And the thing that Matthias really stresses, and it makes perfect sense, is that those who are in the mass formation mode always create a scapegoat. They're compelled to create a scapegoat because they have to blame somebody for their failures, and they can't understand anything else, so they create a scapegoat. Totally irrational. Mm-hmm. So now we have a pandemic of the unvaccinated, for instance.
Yes.
That's a scapegoat. And we could probably
just fix the unvaccinated, and then we fix the problem.
Yeah, this is like, well, no, a pandemic has to do with a virus, not with people. It's like there's no pandemic of the unvaccinated. And the same thing with wearing masks, for instance. Yes. If you didn't wear a mask, oh my gosh, you're a killer. You're killing your uncle or my aunt or grandma, whatever. Yes. If you don't wear a mask. Now, if I wear a mask, I'm, if people used to stop me when because I haven't worn a mask yet, ever, and I won't.
Yep, me neither.
People, stop me in a store and just chastise me. I said to one lady, I said, ma'am, thank you so much for protecting me. And I walked away. Yeah. He was not happy.
There's no point in arguing. Just smile and wave. Okay.
I know. But here's what happened with this. In any case, the scapegoat has always been identified first. In Russia, it was the rich and the intelligentsia. They were the scapegoat for the people. They were the ones causing all the problem. They were the first ones to be shot and killed during the revolution. And in Nazi Germany, you had, of course, the Jews, but you also had blacks. He hated blacks. You had all the invalids, the cripples, and the mentally retarded people. And he hated gypsies too. Yes. Oh, dang. Get rid of those gypsies, man. They're really bad. Yeah. So the scapegoat became this group of people. And you saw the same thing in the Holodomor in Ukraine in the 30s, where all of a sudden the farmers were set up to be the scapegoat, and they took away their seed. They took away their farm equipment. They couldn't grow seed, and hundreds of thousands of people starved to death in short time. So there's always a scapegoat. Cambodia had a scapegoat with the killing fields back, decades ago. Well, here's what Matthias brings forward, and I'm convinced this is absolutely true. He said the only protection or the only pushback against mass formation is free speech.
Yes.
That took me aside because I'm executive director of an organization called Citizens for Free Speech. I never thought of this before. He said, it's free speech. Oh, I got to look at this now. Seriously.
Right.
And he said, because of course, Europeans are culturally sensitive to genocide. They've had several. and they understand it. Grandma and grandpa pass stories down.
Yes. Yes.
It's very real. And he gets real quiet when he brings this up, but he says the scapegoat is important because when the scapegoat loses its voice to speak out and say, I'm over here and this is what's happening to me, help me, that sort of thing.
Yep.
He said, when the scapegoat is silenced, he says, that's exactly the point where the killing begins. That's frightening. That's frightening. And there has been an attack in the United States on free speech. That's a whole nother track, by the way, like energy and money. And free speech has been under intense attack, especially since COVID began.
This little podcast has been censored extraordinarily. And I'm still at a loss for words when I see people like Russell Brand, who talks largely the same amount of things. I back everything I say up with articles and with other, pieces of literature, and he's still going strong. And my little podcast, I'm kicked off YouTube. I'm kicked off Twitter. Yeah. It's fascinating to me. What is, what is going on here, and what's going on in Canada, because I'm Canadian and living in the US now for many years, but my whole family's in Canada. I'm just blown away by the censorship there.
Yes, it is amazing.
And the campaign against the unvaccinated. They are running radio ads that say things like, everyone knows at least one person that is unvaccinated. It is your duty as a Canadian citizen to speak to them. It is nuts. Absolutely nuts. And for the large part in British Columbia, they're buying in.
Yes. I know. That's mass formation.
Mm-hmm.
Mass formation has to have a scapegoat. So anybody else that suggests a scapegoat is like they all jump on it at the same time. Oh yeah, that's it.
Right.
Never
mind that all the body of evidence shows that these ridiculous shots do not stop transmission. Yes. They injure a great deal of the people who take them. There are side effects beyond belief, irreparable damage. Our disability rate is going up. We have insurance agents coming forward saying, listen, we can't continue at this rate to pay out. All of these types of things. There's so much evidence, but still.
Yes, there really is. And back in when Rome fell and burned to the ground eventually, the scapegoat back then were Christians. They blamed the Christians. And
I think we're headed there.
There was a run up to that in persecution of Christians. They just out of the blue say that, but the Christians have been under persecution for a long time as being the problem with society. There were stories that floated around that those in mass formation believed back then that said Christians drink the blood of babies. They sacrifice their own children, drink their blood. And of course, they're horrible people. They're Satan worshiping people, whatever. And the furor got so bad that when Rome burned, they blamed it, and Christians ended up being put on torches, crosses and stuff up and down the Roman road, because they had no voice at that point. They couldn't speak. Today in the modern world, where we look at all the means of communication, we have the internet, we have newspapers, we have radio and TV and stuff like that. Podcasts now too is a great thing. But those who were in mass formation, they identify the scapegoat, okay? And by and large, we are the scapegoat right now. But they identify the scapegoat, and then those who are in mass formation seek to silence the scapegoat. In other words, they can't let them speak out because they would tell the truth. So they try to silence the scapegoat. And this is why Desmond gets kind of worked up over this, because all the efforts of censorship around the world today is not to silence anybody else that's just off the wall crazy, that really needs some fact checking done on them.
Right.
They're only after those who are part of their self-defined scapegoat. And that's you, and that's me. And
that is so like clearly demonstrated when we now, there's no regulation on porn. for goodness sakes, right?
Yes.
You can demonstrate porn in front of a group of young people in these parades and whatnot, and it's totally fine. Totally fine. But we can't question actual data.
Right. That's right. This is a historical pattern. This is not like it's not like it's just us.
No.
That doesn't come out quite right. It's not this just us. This has been a historical pattern going back centuries, probably.
Yes.
And maybe
and that's why it's so important to understand the history.
Yes, it really is
important, because this didn't come out of nowhere. And this agenda has actually been in play for a very long time. They didn't want separate countries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the globalists, they've never wanted this. They've been attacking this dynamic for, decades and decades.
Yes. I should probably read a paragraph out of my book here, if I can find it real quick.
Please do. Is this?
I'm looking. Okay.
Is this from
okay.
Technocracy Now?
I'm looking at Technocracy: The Hard Road to World Order. Back in the day when the Trilateral Commission was founded, there was a scholar, one of the original founding members of the commission, by the name of Richard Gardner. I forget what university he worked for. He's a prominent academic. And he wrote this article for Foreign Affairs magazine called The Hard Road to World Order. And both Anthony Sutton and myself, he was my co-author and researcher on our work on Trilateral Commission. He wrote this article, and we pegged it immediately as being kind of a manifesto, sort of the Trilateral Commission, because he was a member, and this is how they worked. They wrote these academic articles, and then see, somebody over there said that's what we're going to do,
right? And
so let's all go do that. And so it was kind of self-referencing rhetoric. But anyway, Richard Gardner wrote this article, and he said in it that the problem that we faced as global elitists was that our frontal assault on the world had failed. They had tried several ways frontally to get their way and to create a new world order, and nothing worked. And so he was complaining, we need to start something new. And so he wrote, in short, the House of World Order will have to be built from the bottom up rather than from the top down. It will look like a great booming, buzzing confusion, but an end run around national sovereignty, eroding it piece by piece, will accomplish much more than the old-fashioned frontal assault. See, they declared, we have suffered death by 1,000 cuts ever since.
Yeah.
Chip, chip, chip. Little here, a little there. They took the long approach this time. Instead of just doing it bang right in your face where people reacted too much, let's just take our time and let's get a long-term strategy to do what we're going to do. And this is how we find ourselves.
Yeah,
that's right. We're worn down.
Right on the World Economic Forum yesterday, I was reading an article from 2016 where it's eight ways of the world in 2030. And so much of what we've already talked about is in these 8 ways. One of them was that the Somalian refugee of today, and this is 2016, is tomorrow's US leader. That is right there. And the first one is that there'll be no products anymore, only services. So you will rent everything. You will own nothing. And of course, there'll be a group of people that dissents from this paradigm, and there'll be swaths out in the rural areas, is what it says. And basically, the language is that they'll push us completely out. There'll be 2 societies.
That's right. Society will be divided in half, the haves and the have-nots. They will be the haves, and we all will be the have-nots if they get their way.
Yes.
That's why Klaus Schwab has said, by 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy.
Mm-hmm.
The first part is true. The second part is total speculation. I don't think anybody's going to be happy, honestly. But they try and gaslight us into thinking, you will be happy. See, this goes back to the battered wife syndrome.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, you will be happy, sweetheart.
Yes. And That's a cold hard. So I've always had an interest in change because I help people with nutrition and health situations, trying to make change to have a better health outcome. And so I've always been interested in studied what it takes to change. And what I've come to understand is that when the pain of not changing becomes greater than the pain of changing, that's the breaking point.
Yes.
But what I'm concerned about is these people in cognitive dissonance or in mass formation, like Desmond says, what will be the pain point that breaks them? Yeah. Because we're getting really scary here.
Yeah. Boy, aren't we ever. Well, you see things like inflation, the price of gas going up and stuff. I won't say who it is. I don't know if they ever hear this, they'd probably kill me. But one of my close relatives, who has been voted for Biden, and they're totally woke, and they're probably totally mass formation. This person said to my wife the other day, and we can't talk to them about anything, nothing at all. But somehow the discussion of high gas prices came up, and how expensive groceries are. And this person volunteered. First time I've ever heard such a thing come out of their mouth. They volunteered and said, maybe I voted for the wrong person.
Wow.
Okay, that's big. That's huge.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know where it's going to go, but I mean, that's a huge revelation. Maybe that person was why we're where we are right now.
Right. I do see and hear a whole lot more talking about registering as an independent.
Yes.
Which is a step.
Yes, it is. It's a step in the right direction.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about the UN and the sustainable development, this Green New Deal, and what that really means.
Yes. Number one is pure technocracy, just straight out of the 1930s, purely. It's control over all resources, and it's using energy to control it. This is self-evident now. I don't even need to explain this anymore.
Right.
They say it's about they're going to control all the resources. When Klaus Schwab stands up, you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy. Somebody has to own stuff, right?
Yeah. Somebody's got to regulate it, control it, dole it out.
Own it, who's going to own it, for crying out loud? Nobody ever asked that. They don't get past the end of their nose to say, well, gee, who's going to own all that stuff? Is it going to be, I don't know, it's going to be General Motors, or, is it going to own all the stuff? Well, of course, you're not going to own it. That's the point. They're going to take everything away from us, and they will control it, and they will turn everything into a service and rent it back to us.
That's right.
This is what Klaus Schwab is all about, and the World Economic Forum. And by the way, the WEF is intricately woven into the United Nations. Mm-hmm. It's all over there. They're so tightly interwoven that you really can't distinguish the difference anymore between the two of them. They totally promote each other, and the WEF especially promotes all United Nations policies, all of the 17 SDGs, goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, every cockeyed policy, the World Health Organization, all those things. They are completely locked into the United Nations.
Yeah.
So, we if the WEF says something, we can bet that it's compatible with something at the United Nations. I don't care what it is. And when he talks about Great Reset, or when the World Economic Forum talks about Great Reset, this is there's a missing piece to this that nobody really understands. Normally, people think about like the Green New Deal, where everything is going to kind of be redone. New economic system, capitalism's out. The green stuff is in. That would be like technocracy. And they crow about creating this new world order that will be completely different than the old, and yet somehow they will be in control of it, et cetera. So, got new economic system over here, new societal system, no politicians need apply. It's just going to be them controlling everything. But what many people have missed, the Great Reset also pertains to people. And they are in process of implementing transhumanism on a global scale to change the people of the world genetically, to change the people of the world to be suitable to live in this new system that they have, that they're calling the Great Reset. So the Great Reset really has two parts: society and people. There's a parable, a biblical Bible parable that talks about putting new wine in old wineskins. You don't do that because new wine expands and old wineskins are stiff. They're hardened, right? They've already reached their maximum. And so you don't do that. You put new wine into new wineskins. And if we could compare this, what we're talking about here, to the World Economic Forum, they're creating a new system, okay, a new wineskin, if you will, with society, into which you put new wine, that would be the people, and you'll have this new utopian system that will fit each other. So from their point of view, and I've seen this thinking in multiple places, so I know it's not just one off. In their view, their new economic societal system will not be complete without having reformed humanity 2.0.
Right. Genetically modified.
And so that's why we have the bum's rush right now, to get the needle into everybody's arm and to get the constant flow of both messenger RNA as well as DNA ultimately into the arms of humans globally, to create a new master, if you will, new template of humanity 2.0. The World Economic Forum actually talks about it in those terms, humanity 2.0.
Yeah, hacking the human.
Hacking him, that's right. Hacking the humans, that's right.
Yeah.
You know, I've got to pull up one other quote for you here. I didn't have this open, but I'm going to pull it up real quick here because it is so prescient. Uh-oh, I got the wrong one. Hang on a sec. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay, try one more time. Only got two chances here. I'm going to get it. Okay, here we go. I want to go down to, just talking about, let's see here. Got to find the quote here. Yeah, here we go. During, let me back up just a second. I've got to tell a little bit of a story on this, I suppose. In 1992, when in Rio de Janeiro, where the Agenda 21 / Sustainable Development Doctrine was created, okay? Yep. That's where it came from. It was Trilateral Commission policy, by the way. The one who is the acknowledged mother of sustainable development is Gru Harlan Brundtland. She was the one that wrote the book Our Common Future, which became the Bible for sustainable development. She was a member of the Trilateral Commission from Europe. And she didn't write this. She didn't write Our Common Future on her own behalf. She wrote it on behalf of the Trilateral Commission. It was trilateral policy that they introduced the United Nations to for sustainable development and Agenda 21. But at the same time that Agenda 21 was passed, there was another track going on called the Biodiversity Convention.
Right.
Same conference, same people, same buildings, everything, just two different thought tracks. The Biodiversity Convention, by and large, was supposed to state, well, here's how we apply Agenda 21, which is the agenda for the 21st century. And so they were very tightly related, and this is where we get most of the sustainable development goals out of today, is out of the Biodiversity Convention. But there were some detractors to that policy, and they were there. They were eyewitnesses. They were not on our side necessarily, but they took exception to what happened, what they saw happening. And they wrote in a book a couple of years later about the Biodiversity Convention in particular. And this is what they said. It said, the convention implicitly equates the diversity of life, animals, and plants to the diversity of genetic codes. By doing so, diversity becomes something modern science can manipulate. It promotes biotechnology as being essential for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. And then they go on to say, this is shocking. The main stake raised by the Biodiversity Convention, and I'll pause, not a little stake, not a minor stake, not just a thought, but the main stake they saw raised by the Biodiversity Convention is an issue of ownership and control over biological diversity. The major concern was protecting the pharmaceutical and emerging biotechnology industries.
Yeah.
Boom. Boom.
Yeah.
This is where it started in earnest. This was a massive intellectual property initiative to take over all biological material on planet Earth.
Right.
And that's what we've seen, by the way. Seeds with Monsanto, insects with Oxitec, fish, pigs, sheep, corn, you name it. Everything
Silicon Valley tech stars jumping into biotech, like Eric Schmidt leaving Google, going into biotech. They're all in biotech because this is the future. Transhumanism. For them. For them,
it is absolutely the future. So they intended in 1992 to take over all genetic manipulation of planet Earth. Anything that lives, they wanted it for their own.
Yep.
And so it became apparent when they talk about resource management, when they talk about, a resource-based economic system, it should come pretty quickly to you that you are included as a resource.
Yes.
You're part of the resources. They are not separate from you. You are part of the resource pool that they're talking about taking over. So we shouldn't be surprised then when we see the former chief medical officer at Moderna, remembering that's where they were the pioneers in messenger RNA, or especially for vaccines now.
Yeah, who never brought a product to market at first.
Right. And it used to be, the name used to be Mode RNA, by the way. They rebranded themselves as Moderna, but Mode RNA, the capital M and the capital RNA, there you go.
Right.
RNA. What's in the shots? RNA. I won't give the whole long term because nobody understands anyway what that stands for, but you go look it up. So the chief medical officer of Moderna, and he resigned a couple of years ago to go do something else, but nothing good, I'm sure. But here's what he had written on his website. This was actually on the Moderna website circa 2017, I think, maybe. I had a snapshot of it going into the Wayback Machine to find it. I found it. Here's what he wrote. Now, remember, this is the chief medical officer of Moderna. This is not some mail clerk.
Right.
Quote, "We are actually hacking the software of life. We think about it as an operating system. So if you could actually change that, if you could introduce a line of code or change a line of code, it turns out it has profound implications for everything." That's a direct quote. You go, holy crud.
Yeah.
What?
If you listen to some of these meetings, these boring, dry meetings, these health summits that they have, which I tend to tune into from time to time, they're painful. They're painful to listen to, but I force myself to listen to them so I can get the truth. They often use things like software or platform when they're talking about these mRNA shots. It's a technology to them. It never has been about health or creating safety, through health. It's never been about that. It's always been about the software, the technology, getting people online to the platform. They say it. I don't know how else to understand. Yes. They tell you that that's what it is.
What a lot of people do not realize, and this is what they call this, by the way, is convergent science. Convergence I haven't heard that is before. The word. Convergence. An acronym for it is NBIC. But every university in the world today that has science departments has created a new convergent science department, at least in function, if not officially, formally. And they draw people from different science departments within the university to attend to this convergent science area. And here are the 4 disciplines that they bring into this. Number 1 is the N stands for nanotechnology. That's control of matter, like atoms, right?
Right.
The B stands for biotechnology, and that has to do with genes. The C stands for the I stands for information technology, which has to do with bits, ones and zeros, right?
Mm-hmm.
And computers and AI, et cetera. And the C stands for cognitive technology, which has to do with neurons in your brain. These four disciplines are combined all over the planet, usually at taxpayer expense, I might add, but nobody knows because journalists don't go into those departments. Hey, what's going on this week, or this year? They just get a free pass.
Right.
So, but universities all over the planet have been doing this now for at least 20 years. It started in earnest around 2000. When the NBIC department started to congeal, and the idea of scientific convergence came about. And the point of scientific convergence is to change the condition of man.
That's right.
This is transhumanism. This is transhuman science, if you will, to change the condition of man.
And it should be noted that they're not even that good at it because
gosh, that's another story. They are not.
They are not good at it.
They're everything they touch turns to gangrene, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Nothing good has happened. Monsanto with all its crazy Roundup ready seeds. Okay. Now they sprayed enough Roundup to where the entire world is polluted right now with Roundup. It's found in everything.
It's in our tissue now.
But it's even in our tissue now. It's right. And it's in our sperm. It's in our, reproductive system. It's in our bodies, it's in our organs. It's in the soil. It's in everything. But not enough to make you fall over dead. That hasn't happened yet. But the seeds that they have created, that they say, oh, this is wonderful because farmer can plant the seeds, weeds grow up, of course, always on a farm. And so when it comes time to harvest, you simply spray the field with Roundup and all the weeds will die, but your Roundup ready plants will not die, giving you a clean harvest. It's going to be beautiful. And so the whole world was forced into buying their stupid GMO or their seeds, that were Roundup ready seeds. This is not the only example, but here's what happened with Roundup ready seeds. The weeds found out a way to get around Roundup, to get around glyphosate. So all of a sudden, super weeds started to come up. And they can't kill the super weeds, no matter how much Roundup they put on it. They can't kill these super weeds that are resistant to Roundup now, making the whole thing moot.
Yes.
Well, this is exactly what's happening now with the genetic modification of people's immune systems to fight this virus.
That's right.
Same thing. It's exactly parallel because it has put pressure to mutate. Because of the stuff that they're giving people, it puts pressure on mutations that would not otherwise be there to create even more virulent and more infectious stuff than what existed in the first place.
It's absolutely
correct.
It
finds a way around it and just gets worse, not better.
And meanwhile, your immune system can no longer keep at bay things like herpes and, those types of
shingles,
Epstein-Barr virus, all the stuff that your body's been a trooper at keeping at bay for you your entire life.
Yes.
It is now not capable of doing. And that is why we're seeing people get shingles and we're seeing Bell's palsy and facial paralysis. It's because what your body could normally handle can no longer handle. Yes. And that should scare you.
Yes, it really should. I noticed the story this last week that Justin Bieber has his face half paralyzed, right?
Yes.
And his wife, come to find out, had a blood clot just a few months earlier. And almost certainly both of them have been vaccinated one time or another. I'm sure they were. They
attended the Met Gala, and the Met Gala was vaccinated only. It was highly advertised as such. Yeah. So we can't concrete, they could have snuck in the back door or whatever, but it is, these are young kids. These are young, healthy kids in the prime of their life.
They should not be having these kinds of problems.
No.
So, but all that to say is what happened with Monsanto, experiment gone wrong, is the same type of thing is happening right now with messenger RNA vaccines, or I loosely say that, the quote unquote vaccines. They're not.
No.
They're still only emergency use only applications. They have not been approved by the FDA or anybody else for that matter. Now they're giving the same thing to children.
Yeah.
6 months and up. This is inconceivable to me. Absolutely inconceivable.
Yep.
Still based on an EUA.
Yes.
That has not been approved and no trials have been done. And I guess maybe you do or don't. I've been traveling with Dr. Judy Mikovits and Dr. Rainer Fulmish.
Yes.
Speaking about crimes against humanity and trying to, drive a case to get some grand juries formed around here in our country to put these people to task. They deserve it for sure. But the interesting thing about this is they could have stopped this 1 month after the first vaccine was given. They should have.
Absolutely. With the
historically,
VAERS
they
data.
should have stopped it right there, and nobody would be upset. I probably would have been upset if they said, "Hey, this ain't working out. We better stop it." But people like this that are running this from the top down. It's not just about money. Money's big, but it's not just about money. Now that we're into it so far that we know there's hundreds of thousands of people who died from the shot, they refuse to stop it. And not only do they refuse to stop the carnage that's already underway, but they intentionally expand the carnage by now giving the same failed vaccine to infants through whatever it is, all the way up. This speaks of outright genocide.
Yes.
They could have stopped it. They're not stopping it. So what does that tell you? I mean, it just tells me they're putting the pedal to the floor to do as much damage as they possibly can do to the human race.
Stopped. Yep. I agree. And all the evidence that's showing, like with the Shara family, I don't know if you know them, but they had a 19-year-old Down syndrome girl who was admitted for COVID, just mild symptoms. And the protocol the hospital gave killed her. And he is, Scott is her father on a tear, rightfully so, trying to get people to acknowledge that, illegal do not resuscitate orders were put in place. And this is a genocide against handicapped people, anybody weak that they see as weak.
Yes. This is the same mentality you saw in Nazi Germany, again, just to make a parallel. The invalid, the mentally retarded, the crippled, and old. Anybody else that was considered too weak for any number of reasons, whatever, to be good contributors to the super race were put up for being killed or worked to death or something. And we still see the same kind of mentality it is against the weak. But the people that have been killed, and this probably is okay to bring it up this way. We talked about the scapegoat, mass formation, the scapegoat, and so on. And when the scapegoat is silenced, that's when the killing begins. If you consider this, that the people groups who have been mostly killed by or injured by this have been the ones that have been silenced, the ones that cannot speak out. Old people, they can't speak out. Infants,
children,
they can't speak out. Down syndrome girl, she can't speak out.
Right. And they quieted her voice. They kicked out her family. Yes.
This has happened. This idea has been replicated a jillion times around the planet.
Yes.
And it's very disturbing. It's very scary, but also just it ought to give everybody that listens to this, your listeners, it ought to give them a sense of alarm that they've never had before.
Yeah.
This is not the time to sit back and drink beer.
No.
Sorry.
And it is not the time to be quiet either.
It's not the time to be quiet.
It's not the time to be quiet. I want to talk briefly about China a little bit, because an interesting thing that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about is the fact that they did not take the mRNA vaccines.
Yeah.
What the heck? Right? Why is nobody talking about that, do you think?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I know. I have long thought that there's, and I can't prove this. I'm speculating now. Time out. I'm speculating. Nobody hold me to this, but I've had the thought for a very long time that there has been open collusion between the people who created the virus in the first place and the people who created the vaccine. In other words, one knew about the other and vice versa, and there's some amount of coordination or cooperation between the creators and the vacciners on that. I don't know what that means exactly. I'm not spending a lot of time on it because it's not, it may come out in time.
Right.
It may not. But what China is doing from the time they came out of the Dark Ages back in 1976, from the time they came out of the Dark Ages, China has been a technocracy. They morphed into a technocracy. By the year 2000, it was openly declared, like in Time magazine, that they were a technocracy. That's the way they roll.
Right.
So what they're doing with this, and here's a country that doesn't care about its people anyway.
Right.
They don't care about the Uyghurs. They don't care about, the protesters. They'll crush anybody if it doesn't agree. If they don't like them, they just crush anybody.
Right.
So they're not concerned about the safety of their people in that sense. Okay. It's not like, well, we killed 500,000 people over here, but no, now we're going to really protect this group over here by not giving them messenger, the mRNA,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
I mean, that argument just has a bunch of problems with it.
Right. They're not inclusive. They're not making LGBTQ Navy videos like our government.
No. There's got to be other reasons for it. And
Yes.
It could be that they are protecting their people in one sense, that if the virus was specifically engineered to attack non-Orientals around the world, which they have the technology to do.
Yep.
That's a possibility. Again, I'm just speculating. I have no proof of that whatsoever. But some scientists have suggested that. We have seen articles over the last few years where we know that they have been collecting DNA from other countries in the world like crazy.
Yes, I've seen testimony in Congress where doctors are warning Congress that, listen, we are sending our genome, we're sending our genome out to be mapped by the Chinese.
Yes, that's problematic in my opinion. Very problematic.
And and by the way, China doesn't do that reciprocally.
Yeah, that's right. But let me just suggest to you something really interesting. In 1976, when Deng Xiaoping came to the United States, but before that, China looked like North Korea. It was a train wreck. They had no economic system. They were just flat on their back. Couldn't do anything right. They were a mess. Failed communist dictatorship. Completely failed. Deng Xiaoping came to Washington, D.C., and guess who he met with? Guess who invited him? He met with Zbigniew Brzezinski. Brzezinski is credited in the history books now as being the champion of bringing China back onto the world stage. He was the guy who engineered the whole thing. Henry Kissinger was involved a few years before that when he made an illegal trip to China to, talk to him, but under Nixon. But Kissinger was a founding member of the Trilateral Commission as well. So whatever he had in it, he handed it off to Brzezinski, and political science departments now credit Brzezinski with high praise for the work he did to bring Deng Xiaoping over, to wine him and dine him, and to get them back on the world stage again. And here's what here's my whole theory on this, a little bit more than a theory, but you'll get it. Did Brzezinski teach Deng Xiaoping about free market economics and capitalism? Or did he teach him and them about the technotronic era, which is technocracy? Obviously, he didn't teach them free market economics. He taught them technocracy. That's why by the year 2000, they were clearly identified as being a technocracy by their own people.
Right.
So what does that mean? Well, it means that it's a country that has been under the surface of the flags and the red star and all that kind of jazz, under the surface, whatever. The country is being run by engineers and scientists who are just hiding behind those flags and the trappings of communism. Has no bearing to communism anymore. They are a pure 100% technocracy clamping down on their people and exporting their technocracy to the rest of the world. Anybody that will take it, they make sure to give them a good injection of technocracy and social credit scoring system and cameras and the whole 9 yards of how to control your people.
Yes. Which is interesting to me, because then my mind goes to the globalists, right? So these global elites, I'm torn. Do they understand that China wants to be the world power? They declare that all the time. Oh, yes. Has China been kind of like a paper tiger for the globalists to be able to test a testing ground? Is that what's going on there? Because the China hustle, there's a great documentary about the housing collapse of 2008 here in America and how they rebuilt the stock market on pretty much fake Chinese companies. And that was how they were able to bring it back. So again, these were fake companies over there. They'd go and visit them, and they're just crappy little warehouses with a few paper boxes there, right? There was really nothing there, but yet China's perceived as this global, growing, thriving economy. Is this where the globalists are using China to bring money back into the American economy?
They love China by and large.
Yeah.
They love China. Elon Musk loves China.
I know.
Peter Thiel, Jeff Bezos, all of our oligarchs love China. The World Economic Forum loves China. They say so.
Trudeau
Nations
loves China. Yeah.
Because China is the most influential component of the United Nations everywhere. I mean, they control probably 80% of all policies that are generated within the United Nations right now. Mm-hmm. So, there's this
and the WHO, right? I mean, the first lady of China is now the spokesperson for the WHO.
Exactly. And so the whole notion that our enemies of the world are Russia and China, that's a straw man. That's rhetoric. It's propaganda. It's kind of like, okay, we'll boil it down to something that's easy for people to understand. You go to court, you hire an attorney, you have some big issue. Maybe it's a divorce, but that's probably a good example. A lot of people have been divorced. Okay, the wife and the husband both hire an attorney separately. They go to court. Maybe they got some assets, children, all kinds of stuff. They go to court. And let the battle begin. There's yelling and there's shouting and there's arguing and there's depositions and there's, affidavits and it gets really bitter at the end, that it can't just settle this whole thing so easily. And so when the judge finally brings down the gavel and says it's going to be this way now, and nobody's really happy about it ever, right? The two attorneys who were just yelling at each other in court, calling each other names, you scumbag, you blah, 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 you this, that, and the other. They walk out, and the minute they get into the hallway, they hug each other. Yeah. Hey, let's go have a drink. Everybody's seen that happen. I have seen it happen personally.
Yes.
And it blew my mind. I said, you can't, what? I thought you were on my side really doing something good. It was all a show. It was just drama.
Yeah.
And this is what we see in the world today. When somebody says, well, China hates us and we hate China and China loves North Korea and, whatever, all these stories about political machinations, it's just nonsense. It's just all drama. And it has been for decades.
Yeah.
So, what big tech has actually done with us, the technologies that were illegal in America, things like cameras that spy on people, right? That was patently illegal 15 years ago.
Yep.
So what they did was they exported their technology to China. China perfected it. Now it's coming back. And nobody's complaining about it because, it's coming back from China
for safety
quietly.
Now. And safety, because we have to be tracked for safety.
That's right. That's right. So the laws have been kind of changed in the meantime, a little chip, and run around national sovereignty. And all of a sudden, all this technology is being re-imported back into the United States. Now it's legal. Now it's perfected. And now it's capturing us as well. It's all a fraud. The whole bit about divisions and our mortal enemies, whatever, is just total fraud. And if by chance we would ever get into a war with China, the United States would get in a war with China, just remember, the war is between governments, not companies. Big difference. Governments fight wars. Who's in control of the military? Only governments. The corporations of the world have always survived war.
Oh, that's odd.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah, they've actually gotten bigger.
I don't know how that happens.
Well, families, children die. Corporations get bigger and stronger, and more regulation comes into play. One thing I want to mention about, these kind of technocrats is that, you may think transhumanism, oh, they'll never own me. But in actuality, they don't have to own your body. They don't have to put you in a prison anymore. It is more about being the gate holder, right? If they own the gate to the oxygen, you're going to pay. If they own the gate to the water, you're going to pay. And I think water is actually next. If you look at Bill Gates's track record and how he pines towards regulation to monopolize a marketplace, he's now working on, changing our poop water into drinkable water. And so you can expect that there'll be regulation soon that will only allow you to be able to drink recycled water, his recycled water. Mm-hmm. And so that's just an example of how they control the resources. This is how they do it. You can't patent something that naturally occurs in nature. And they do find caveats to that with the GMO seed. They just make the same seed. They just, tweak it a little bit, and now they can hold the patent on it. They are going to do the same thing with things that we need to live.
Yes. Yes. And this is, I think it's already evident in many places around the world. I think it already is.
Yes. That's why we're seeing so many suicides in India with farmers and things of that nature.
I saw a scientific paper, actually. Some scientist probably never been to Africa before in his life, but he was writing some kind of a policy suggestion for Africa, which has always been raped by Western northern powers to rip off their natural resources or deny them ability to use their own natural resources. And so there's long been an antipathy between some African countries and some northern, usually Western countries as well. And this scientist says, in order to solve Africa's development problems, their food problems, now they have a food shortage, is to let them eat bugs.
Oh, yeah.
And they suggest now that flies, there's lots of flies in Africa. I can attest to that. I've been there, seen them. That's because they have cattle. And the cattle are messy, and the cattle poop on the ground, and the flies love that. That's where they live. And so there's lots of flies. So let them kill and dry up flies, grow flies or whatever, and they can eat a nice, protein diet of insect powder when it's, crushed and stuff. This is not only condescending, paternalistic, bigoted. I don't know what other kind of adjectives you could use. It's horrible to think, but then that also expresses how little value the technocrats assign to people. They don't see people as anything exceptional whatsoever. Certainly nothing of a divine nature, of an elevated nature. They see people just like bugs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have had some guests on the podcast and this is actually something I've come to understand, is that a lot of these technocrats are actually on the spectrum in some instances, because that's how they're able to kind of detach themselves from humanity. It's all about systems. It's all about making things efficient. And so a lot of them actually, portray traits of like autism, because they don't get the messiness of life.
Yes.
They don't see the beauty in the messiness of life like we do.
Yes, I know.
I just want to I want to value your time, and I thank you so much for coming on today. This was a conversation I was really looking forward to, because as I mentioned to you before we started talking, I feel like I'm in a mental institution. So when I get a good hour in with somebody who understands and can teach me more about what's going in, I just get really excited about sharing the information. So thank you so much.
You're entirely welcome. And I would encourage anybody listening to this, go online or go to technocracy.news and get one or both of my books. This is not rocket science. We're not talking about concepts that are so hard to understand that, you got to have a PhD to understand it. Look, I don't have a PhD. Okay. I'm just like everybody else. If I can understand it, you can understand it. The question is, do you want to understand it? And then will you understand it? Right.
Yes.
So I encourage people to get a book and read it. And if you don't like books, okay, get a Kindle, read it on your tablet. If you don't like tablet, okay, fine. Get the audiobook and read and listen to the audiobook when you're driving.
Yes. Even if you can get it in 15 minutes at a time.
Yes. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a number of videos and interviews and lectures and stuff I've done on the internet, various places, from Rumble to Gab. I mean, you name it. I don't know. They're all out there. Not on YouTube anymore. I got thrown off long ago.
Yeah, so me too.
we're in good company together here. We immediately can commiserate over YouTube. But there is no substitute for learning the truth, the reality of what's going on here. And it, like I said, it is not hard. I was an eyewitness to this stuff. I don't speak about this as I don't want to be condescending here at all, but I don't speak of this as somebody who just decided to do a research project 5 years ago, start, quoting whatever other people read.
Right.
I'm an eyewitness to this.
40 years.
I've been doing this now, actually 45 years.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for my original mentoring with Professor Anthony Sutton. I just happened to meet him by chance one time, and we hit it off, and we formed a partnership to research and write about the Trilateral Commission. If it wasn't for him, I would know nothing on what I'm doing today. I never would have gotten this far. But what I didn't learn in college, he taught me in life. And I went to college, but it was a waste of time, absolute waste of time. I didn't get anything useful out of it. But I learned how to do research. I learned how to write. I was an eyewitness to these things starting in the mid-1970s with the Carter administration. All the way forward, I watched the entire parade go by and studied it as I went along, studied the literature, the papers these people put out, books like The Earth Brokers that I quoted from earlier, whatever. Most people have never seen these books, and you couldn't read them in a short period of time anyway. Granted, if you had my library and you said, okay, I'm going to read everything you've read, Pat Wood, over the years, you'd never finish at that point. Because it took me 45 years to get through it. Not that I'm a voracious reader, I'm not, but you get my point. Now there's just too much original research out there to consume it in a very short period of time. So people will get the core of something from a person like myself who has been there, witnessed it. Back in the late 70s, we actually did interviews where we talked cross table with members of the Trilateral Commission, to interview them, to ask them questions, to get inside their head, whatever. I know these people. And so when I write books like Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order, or Technocracy, The Trojan Horse of Global Transformation, my experience is all part of that all the way through. And if you want my eyewitness testimony, there it is, and a lot more stuff in it as well. So I just can't encourage people enough. Get the books. Read it. Take your time. It's worth it. It'll change your life. And as the famous general Sun Tzu said, and I think it was 600 BC, you cannot defeat an enemy you do not know. That's a truism that has stood the test of time, folks. I can promise you that. You cannot defeat an enemy who you do not know.
Right. And the answer is simple as in terms of what do? We do not comply.
That's the first part. That's absolutely the first part. You need to stiffen your backbone and say no to anything that they come up with. And that is going to cost you be ready for that. I mean, don't be so wimpy that you're saying, oh, I don't want any pain. I don't want to lose anything, whatever, You have to get some backbone. I haven't worn a mask since this thing began. That cost me a lot. There are some restaurants and stores I couldn't get into, period.
Can't get on an airplane. I haven't been on an airplane in over 2 years.
That's right. I didn't fly for a long time. And when the mask mandate got shot down by the federal judge down in Florida, there was an eruption of happiness on the airplanes right then.
Yeah.
It's just, yay, everybody's having a party. The stewardesses are walking up and down collecting face masks and their little plastic bags, on airplanes that were in flight when that ruling came down.
Yes.
The world was thrilled.
Yes.
But it cost me something. I had to figure that cost before I decided I'm not wearing a mask.
That's right.
And that's just a little thing. I know it's a little thing, but you have to figure out it's going to cost you something. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to let it cost you something. Just take it on the chin.
Yes.
And do it. That's all I can say. And I don't care what it is. You just have to draw the line in the sand and say, I'm not crossing this line anymore.
That's right. Thank you, Patrick. It has been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Likewise, you too. You're knowledgeable. You're up on a lot of issues and stuff, and I'm always excited when I can have such a good interview with somebody who kind of has the right mindset to begin with, and you've done a good job.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for being on the Naturally Inspired podcast today.
Likewise.
If the Naturally Inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.